I'm glad that you stopped only if in fact you get a chance to do some bonding with Mike Engel, who I mentioned, who's really promoted diners, and he's a good contact for you guys. You can get a lot from each other, I think. In
Mike Engel.
Engel.
Yeah, we'll definitely.
And
do.
he has your information right now.
Excellent.
And I'll definitely make sure he follows up with you and vice versa, because, like I said, he's responsible for a lot of diners, happening, and it's amazing the passion that you and Mike and of course Gordon, who saved probably 3 or 4 diners at least in his life, and put his heart and soul into it, at living in I would say sacrificing, but he loves people, and like I said, I'm here essentially enjoying my conversation with you and hearing your story, and it's a beautiful thing that a diner can actually bring people together and they can discuss these things. But like I said, you're above and beyond the average person from the standpoint of just your passion for this thing. So we're really happy to have you. And where do you see, like, you're looking to possibly, you're going to do a book eventually, I hope?
I like to do a book. Definitely, a number of problems happen. We photographers, for instance. I also draw and paint, the American landscape.
That's what I was going to get to, yeah.
But speaking about photography, we photographers are, I believe, our own worst editors. Okay, so we're obviously very emotionally attached, so you have to step away. I now have my master's degree, in a fine art, and I've learned over the years how to be very, critical, self-critical in a constructive way, of looking at an image. And I've spent, of course, a tremendous amount of hours, working in the art, and I've had some very strong, professors, and I keep in touch with a professor I had at Ohio State by the name of James Friedman, who I believe is an extremely brilliant photographer in his own right, and he's I'm going to hire him to help me edit. The hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of color slides, which I'm now scanning. And black and white negatives. I still shoot with film as well as digital, of my roadside American, of what I call the American cultural landscape. If somebody asks me, what do I do? I photograph the American cultural landscape. Diners being a big part of that, obviously, because I love the 20th century. And there's a lot to learn about diners. Many of us who have loved diners because of that renaissance, in diners. But diners for me are a big part of this larger interest in the American cultural landscape. And I'd love to do several books, but one on my dusk and night photography, and then one just on my journeys across America. And with this homesickness I have for the 20th century, in this, to understand the psychology of my particular images. There's, I believe, a certain quietness, a certain melancholiness, a certain uneasiness with them, a certain bit of anxiety, just with a sense of composition and the stillness I'll have. A lot of abandoned, dispossessed, rundown places that I'm very interested in. Yet, then the resurrection of the diner, because the diner for me always, as a psychologist from Harvard University, I believe Harvard had talked about why do people like the American diner? What's distinct about the American diner? And you had just said it. It's one of the few places in America where strangers could come in and sit down and talk to each other and not feel that they're invading each other's space. Yeah. That a diner there's a home feeling to a diner. And I think, like many others who like diners, fantasize about living close to one where you can always show up on a winter morning on a Sunday, waltz in and sit down and spend 3 hours at your counter seat or booth seat with breakfast, talking with other people with your countless refills of coffee.
When we get a blizzard,
yes,
the news media comes in here and interviews, and of course she's Ruth comes in here, God bless her, 5 o'clock in the morning every day, right? And it's so bad that the road department picks her up. She has no excuse not to come in. They'll actually go get her out near Rome,
I love
drag her rump out of the house,
and
drive her to work because they want to get fed.
right,
You know?
good for them. You know, see, this is, you know, and what I always have the fantasy that I would be have a studio that's, you know, very very close to a diner.
Hmm.
And, you know, and of course, the older the diner, and the you know, and with its authenticity, the better, of course. But a diner that would be in a small urban town, and always the fantasy has it that it would be very close or next to a railway yard, or
Of course.
a rail line,
Yeah.
and that about every 30 minutes a big huge freight train
Exactly.
comes barreling through. You know, and just something about that, the sound of the train horn and the rumbling freight cars,
there's
and
no
the
doubt
metal to
it.
metal. I love being around railway yards. And people look at my drawing. I always pick places to draw so that I'm within sight shot or earshot, but certainly sight shot of a railway line. And of course, that's growing up in Youngstown, Ohio, with the, you know, the dozens and dozens and dozens of freight trains that used to roll through there. And but to me, that's a perfect life. You know, I think of, you know, that's my heaven. And so I could be painting at 3 o'clock in the morning, put down my brush, come down, go to an all-night diner, sit and talk with a cup of coffee at the booth, you know, with the marble countertop and the tile floor and the smell of the wood.